Am I the a-hole for telling my father-in-law they won't ever be living with us? Prior to my wife and me trying for our first child, we spoke with both sets of parents and asked whether they would have any interest in helping watch their grandkids until preschool starts. Both sets were over the moon excited. All four were fully retired, and they all said absolutely. The plan was to trade off weeks, so they would know their schedules for booking their own appointments, etc. My wife got pregnant, and around 10 weeks post-birth, as she was getting ready to transition back to work, her parents said they had changed their minds and decided to travel more and enjoy their later years. Okay. My parents did their absolute best to pick up my in-laws' slack, but daily childcare was too much with my wife and me both working full-time. We ended up with my parents watching the kids on Mondays and Wednesdays, paying for childcare on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and my wife and I working half days on Fridays to handle that, with my parents taking Fridays whenever we needed them to. They're incredible. It was very frustrating to have my in-laws say one thing and do the opposite. In 6 years, they've never once watched any of our kids for a single day. So my wife and I bought a house about a week ago. They came over to check it out while we were unboxing, and my father-in-law saw that the house has a first-floor master bedroom with a full bath. He turned to my mother-in-law and said, "Oh, thank God we won't have to do stairs." I said, "Come again?" My mother-in-law said that of my wife and her 2 siblings, we are doing by far the best off, and it would make the most sense for them to live with us, as they're in their 70s and a house is becoming too much for them already. I audibly laughed, hard and loud, and said, "Hell would freeze before you live here," which was met with shock from both of them. I explained that when we needed their help, they turned their backs, so we were simply doing the same. My wife agreed. She expressed how expensive and difficult it was with zero help from one side of our village. That was their call, but we were now returning the favor. They're incredibly upset and hurt over this revelation. Were we the a-holes for taking this stance? I don't think so at all. But if the votes are a bloodbath, I'll reconsider, as we do have the space. Now for the top comments before the mini update. The best part is that you and your wife are on the same page. Your wife is a treasure OP, not the a-hole at all. Shout it louder. My wife knows and I tell her often, but when I show her this later in bed, she'll be appreciative others agree, LOL. She's a legend. Good for you both. You've both got great reflexes. But seriously, the worst part is that they assumed rather than asked. If they had asked appropriately about moving in, you might not have laughed in their faces. You still would have said no, but the delivery would have been different. Them asking would have at least showed respect. Not the a-hole, and screw being nicer. They don't owe you help, and you don't owe them a retirement home. Also, a bigger deal than daily child care is not watching the kids a single time in 6 years. What kind of grandparents aren't involved at all? One hand washes the other. The day we started paying $390 a week for 2 days of infant childcare, their dreams of living in our home vanished into thin air. My mom and dad helped a lot with my kids when they were little. They also came to ball games, school events, etc. A few years ago, my mom's health took a nosedive, and my boys and I moved in to help with doctor's appointments and managing a new form of chaos. Unfortunately, it was my dad who surprised us and passed in his sleep. Unfortunate that it was so sudden, not that it was him versus my mom, leaving my medically fragile mom heartbroken. My boys and I have stayed, and I manage her meds, do all her driving, run her errands, etc. I have no qualms about it. She was there for my kids and me without question. We will be there for her. This is the way. We're raising kids without a village, and it's a rough go. If or when my parents need help, I'm not going to come running. I've been raw dogging raising kids for years, and they've never stepped up. Bless the relationships you've made, because over here in the cold, I can vouch that they're priceless. Now for the mini update. To elaborate on what I said in other comments, we try our best to make the best possible decisions for our family. We were on the fence about kids for years and didn't think we would have them at all. We had a dog and a cat, and our little family of 4 was very content and easy. We went on nice vacations every 6 months. We were perfectly open to the idea of being childless forever and would still enjoy our lives and find deep gratification from them. However, as we aged a bit, we reconsidered. We were still young enough that we could have waited multiple years longer if things didn't feel right. This is part of why we were frustrated with my in-laws. Had they simply said, we'd gladly pick up kids from preschool in an emergency, but simply cannot do daily childcare, we would have accepted that and planned accordingly. Maybe that meant relocating to be much closer to my parents. Maybe that meant relocating to be closer to daycares. Maybe it meant putting a pin in having kids for a year or two and then reassessing. Maybe knowing we would not get help from her side would have changed how we handled our employment, as her work depends on her heavily. Had she known, for example, that we would like her to stay home the first year or two, she could have trained a replacement during the pregnancy months, versus telling them the entire time, "Don't worry, I'm coming back 3 months after." We would have had options if they had told us the truth. We spoke with them prior to stopping birth control, so they had over a year to say, "Hey guys, we've actually changed our minds on this," and we could have pivoted accordingly. But they didn't. They waited until about 10 days before she was returning to work to drop a bomb on us. Reddit gets wound up over some topics, and I get that childcare is one of them. But ask yourself, if you ask your mom for something big a year ago, something really important, and she said with full confidence, "I'm going to ride with you, I've got your back on this," and then a week or two before said, "Nah, I'm good." Most people, if they're being honest, would say that's pretty cruel to wait until the very end to say something. To this day, we still don't know why they didn't say something 1 month earlier, 4 months earlier, or 10 months earlier. So no, we didn't imagine all grandparents would plan their lives and retirement around our reproductive plans. We did what adults do. We spoke to them about it, learned of their high excitement, checked the box that they said they'd gladly help, and then dealt with everything that followed as best as we could. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after what I overheard her say about me? I, 26 female, need an outside perspective because my entire family is split, and I honestly don't know if I'm overreacting or finally standing up for myself. My sister Emily, 30 female, is getting married in 2 months. Growing up, we were never super close. She was always the golden child. If you know, you know. And I was kind of just there. Not ignored per se, but definitely not celebrated the same way, etc. Still, I agreed to be a bridesmaid because my mom begged me and said it would mean the world to Emily. Planning has been stressful, but nothing crazy, until last weekend. Emily had a small bachelorette weekend at an Airbnb. There were 7 of us total. On the second night, I went upstairs early because I had a headache and wasn't feeling well. Around midnight, I realized I had left my charger downstairs, so I went back down quietly because I didn't want to wake anyone who might have been asleep. That's when I overheard Emily talking to her maid of honor. She didn't know I was on the stairs. She was drunk, laughing, and said, "I only asked her to be a bridesmaid so my mom would shut up. She's always ruining things anyway. I swear to God if she shows up looking for attention, I'll lose it." Her friend laughed and said something like, "Well, at least you'll look better next to her, so..." Emily said, "Exactly. It's kind of a win-win." I froze. I felt like I couldn't breathe. For context, I've struggled with my confidence for years, especially compared to Emily. She knows this. She's made comments my whole life about my weight, my hair, and my clothes, and has always framed it as helpful advice. I went back upstairs and didn't say anything for the rest of the weekend. When we got home, I sent her a message saying I was stepping down as a bridesmaid and wouldn't be attending the wedding. I didn't explain why at first. I just said I needed space and wished her the best. After I stepped down, she kept pushing for a reason, saying it didn't make sense and that I was once again being dramatic as always. I didn't tell her exactly what I heard, but I did tell her that I overheard a conversation at the bachelorette party that really hurt me. She put 2 and 2 together on her own after that. Then she lost it. She called me crying, saying I was purposefully sabotaging her big day, that I was being dramatic, and that everyone says things they don't mean when they're drunk. My mom called me next and said I was punishing the whole family over a misunderstanding. My dad says I should be the bigger person. Here's where it gets worse. Yesterday, Emily posted in the bridesmaids group chat that I forgot I was still in, that she's heartbroken, that I'm abandoning her, and that she never meant to hurt me. but she never apologized, not once. Now some in my family is texting me saying I'm selfish, and the other half is telling me I finally did what they wish they had the courage to do. I haven't responded to anyone yet. Am I the a-hole for refusing to go to her wedding after overhearing that conversation? I'm conflicted and don't know what to do, and part of me is telling myself that I am. Your sister sounds like a two-faced yunt. In hindsight, you should have recorded her saying all that garbage and sent it to your whole family and her fiancé. Screw 'em all. I wish I did. My phone was dead. That's why I was going to get my charger, which led to all this BS. You can always goad her into repeating all that garbage. Arrogant a-holes love to boast and talk down to people. It wouldn't be too difficult with a little needling. Not the a-hole. No, you didn't mean to hurt me, but you did. And you didn't bother to apologize. In vino veritas. Not the a-hole. Your sister is just a mean girl type and a bitch to boot. She has done this your whole life. And sorry, but people say stuff when drunk that they wouldn't normally say when sober. You're not being dramatic. You're saving yourself from being the scapegoat when it's not a perfect day for her or whatever other BS she can dream up. Make it clear to your parents that you're done being dumped on by her and treated as a lesser person by them. If they can't see that, and if she can't be human for once and make a real apology, then they can buzz off. Next story. Am I in the wrong for refusing to sell my late boyfriend's golden Rolex to help pay for a house? Hi all, I met my late boyfriend many years ago while we were in grad school. He was my first boyfriend, and I shared many memories with him. He had heart rhythm problems from birth that never improved with age. I knew this when I started dating him, and accepted those risks in our relationship. He owned a golden Rolex that he loved to wear. He had a few other watches, but there wasn't a time I saw him without that specific one. As his heart condition worsened over the next few years, he mentioned that he wanted to leave the watch in my possession if he passed away. I always laughed it off because I thought he was joking. But after he inevitably passed away, I realized he was serious. The court contacted me and gave me possession of the watch, while the rest of his estate went to his family. For a long time, I was afraid to wear it and kept it hidden in my apartment. Eventually, I did some research and found that these watches can take a beating and tolerate daily wear. I had it resized to fit my wrist, and now I wear it every day as a way to remember him. Since then, I've grown emotionally attached to the watch. Fast forward to today, I'm happily engaged to my fiancé. We're looking to purchase our first home in a few years and even plan on having kids. We aren't in any financial trouble. We can comfortably save for a house over the next few years, but my fiancé insists we sell the Rolex to move into the house sooner and start a new future together. I told him I wasn't comfortable selling the watch because it was a gift from someone I shared important memories with, and we don't need the money. It would just take us a bit longer to save. My fiancé disagrees and thinks I'm overly attached to it. I don't think I'm wrong for valuing and appreciating a meaningful gift from my past. If I had to choose between the watch and putting food on the table, of course I'd sell it. But we're nowhere near that situation. Am I being rational, or am I letting my feelings for the watch cloud my judgment and future with my fiancé? Which of his treasured possessions is he planning to sell to help buy this house? Lol, that's a good point. Thank you all for your kind responses. I thought I was going crazy here. I think he singled out my watch because it's an easy, expensive sell. And maybe it's a reminder that you loved another man at one point. He could be insecure about it, or feel like he's competing with a ghost. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just pointing out it could be his perspective. If that's the case, he might eventually do something bad, like stealing and selling your watch so he doesn't have to see it anymore. Wrong fiancé. I told the same thing to my sister. Her fiancé passed away in a car accident, and when she started dating again a year later, the new guy said, "Why are you still so sad?" I told her, he can have all of you, even the grieving parts, or he can have none of you. She is now married to a man who celebrates her late fiancé's birthday with her every year, because he's grateful that someone loved her when they could. Not too long ago, there was a post about a fiancé stealing a wedding ring from a widow just because he was jealous. He even helped her look for the ring, but his mom found it in their house and returned it. That's how the woman found out. She dumped him. Be careful with your watch and your man. Last story. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to pay my girlfriend's debt? So, I'm 24 male, and my girlfriend is 23 female, and we want to take things to the next step. I genuinely don't mind, and I'd be down. My only issue is that my partner has a lot of debt that she hasn't even started working on. To be clear, she has $197,000 in debt, and she's pushing me to pay this off, along with buying our rings. I don't mind spending money on her when it's a date, but taking care of her debt, especially when she doesn't want to put any money toward it herself and wanting outrageously expensive rings, is a little much for me. She's told me that if I won't do it, someone else will, and I don't know where I stand with that. I've talked to her about how she goes on trips at least 1 or 2 times a year and chose the most expensive options for college, which led to the $197,000 in debt. I have no issue supporting her, but her not contributing anything toward her debt is a lot for me. I chose the cheaper route. I went to community college, then a 4-year university, and my job will pay for my master's degree. I'll be around $25,000 in debt at most after all my schooling. Am I the a-hole for being unable or hesitant to pay her debt and for not wanting to spend a fortune on her ring? $197,000 debt at 23? Wow. Just wow. Right? I was $100,000 in debt by 26, but I went to law school and was making 6 figures with an active practice by 28. It was a strategic risk to avoid spending my life in a $40,000 to $60,000 job. She didn't say that if you don't marry her, she'll find someone else. She said if you don't pay her debt, she'll find someone who will. She flat out told you her intentions. Take the hint. Take the hint and run far and run fast. She's looking for a sucker to pay her debts. She's financially irresponsible, and you two aren't compatible. Cut your losses now. I don't know. She seems pretty financially savvy to me. Get into debt, find a sucker to pay it off, then rinse and repeat. The sucker who pays her debt while buying her pretty jewelry is the financially irresponsible one. I wish I'd thought of that when I was young and pretty enough to pull it off. Damn my parents for instilling ethics in me.